In a small orphanage, in a small village in Russia, there is a young boy. His hair is jet black and messy. He wears tattered jeans and an old dingy gray shirt. Nothing is known of him. For 10 years, he sat in his bed in his room, never moving, never blinking, never eating or sleeping. In the 10 years, he had not seemed to age at all, continuing to look like a 7-year-old boy. The only thing that proved he was alive was the slow rise and fall of his chest as he breathed, and the refusal to take his eyes off anyone who entered the room alone. A lone psychiatrist came over in an attempt to find out why the boy had done nothing in 10 years. He entered the room and shut the door behind him. 30 minutes later, the orphanage nurse came to check on the two of them. Opening the door, she saw the child, still sitting, still not moving, eyes fixed on her. However, something seemed different. He appeared a slight amount larger, not by much, but enough to make him look like a late 8 or early 9-year-old. The psychiatrist was no longer in the room. The door was the only exit, as the room had no windows, vents, or anything. And it was, in fact, in the exact center of the orphanage. He continued to sit, only seen occasionally by the lady who came to check on him, and she never closed the door upon entry. A week or so later, 2 law enforcement personnel entered the orphanage, demanding to speak to the boy about the disappearance of the psychiatrist. The 2 of them entered, closing the door behind them as the head of the orphanage stood outside the door. 30 minutes passed, and not a sound came from the room. The head of the orphanage eased the door open. The boy was still on the bed, but the officers were no longer there. The boy was now quite noticeably bigger, about the size of a 15-year-old. His skin was darker than usual, and he looked angrier than ever. But one thing remained the same: his cold, unforgiving eyes that stared at whoever entered. Eventually, the law organized a large group of 10 officers to speak to the boy. They entered the room and left the door open, until one of the younger orphans ran up and shut it, apparently in a daze. The head of the orphanage quickly ran to reopen the door, and upon doing so, froze him in horror. A low, rumbling noise came from the room.
One more.
If you return to that orphanage, you will see it still continues to run. The orphans live in good care, health, and education. However, there is one room that you will see is boarded up and far from enterable. If you ask what is behind it, you will be removed forcefully from the orphanage. However, when no one's looking, if you place your ear to the door, you will hear a low, ominous, growling sound. And if you listen for a bit, you will hear a voice say,
One